Okay, folks, Kimball is here. Another fascinating guest for the Words That Sell podcast series. Theme for this current series is about thought leadership. And so what I'll be doing is I'll be having interesting guests who have an interest in the topic of thought leadership, who are doing something in that area themselves. And I'm sure I'll share some good tips, and I'll add my 2 cents worth as well. So I've got Chris McNeil. He hails from South Carolina, beautiful little city, Charleston. How you doing there, Chris?
I'm doing great, Kim.
That's good. Top of the morning for you. It's evening for me, but it doesn't really matter because, hey, we're in the online space, the online world. We can do business anywhere in the world.
Yes.
Now, yeah, absolutely. Now, what I'll do is just to give you a bit of background about Chris, I will just read a few notes here that Chris has given me, and I already knew this anyway, but he's kind of formalized it into a little bit of a coherent structure, if you like. So in addition to being the founder of Thought Leadership Consultancy and creator of the Thought process, and that's Thought, T-H-A-U-T, okay? Thought process of strategic thought leadership. Chris is the host of the Thought Leadership Studio podcast, and I've listened to several of those episodes already. Pretty good stuff. And is working on a book tentatively called Pullfillment. Pullfillment. Guess what that's about? Yeah, it takes me back to the early days of affiliate marketing. I used to call it pull marketing. Better to get people to come to you rather than you always hustling. Chris is a serial entrepreneur and has been since age 24. He brings both the power of technology and the art of positive persuasion to give clients clear leadership in their niches. He gained a prominence when he owned a chain of personal fitness studios and wrote web applications for them that won both a 2004 Nova 7 Award and a 2007 Nova 7 Award for innovation in websites and new technology. He was also awarded the 2008 Innovators Awards from the Charleston Regional Business Journal for the FitMenu online healthy dining program after he sold the studios and began developing online marketing solutions for multiple corporate clients in the Charleston, South Carolina area. Chris honed his marketing instincts, modeling the best practices of the masters of marketing like Seth Godin and Jay Abraham. Oh, I remember Jay so well. I attended a one-day event in Sydney, Australia. Jay Abraham was there were two guests, Jay Abraham and what's his name? The guy. I'll think of it. I'll come back to it in a minute. Anyway, I'll come back to that. Just got off the point there, but he's modelled the best practices of the masters of marketing like Seth Godin and Jay Abraham, first in his own brick-and-mortar businesses, then launching and running his own digital marketing agency called Pensarc, which he ran for 10 years before deciding to take what he learned from digital marketing and create the fifth level web concept. In addition to being an award-winning developer and digital marketer, Chris is an NLP master practitioner and has developed innovative methods of using NLP in sales and marketing. He also enjoys time with his wife, Megan, and playing guitar in an original rock band, Strings of Air. And you can listen to Chris playing the guitar when you plug into one of these podcast episodes. Now, the person I was also thinking of when I was saying I attended a one-day event in Sydney, Australia, Jay Abraham, and the other one was Michael Gerber, E-Myth fame.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I like both of them, but Michael Gerber brought the house down. One of the best public speakers I've ever heard. Jay, not such a great public speaker, but he's got a fantastic marketing mind. So it was a good balance between the two.
Excellent.
All right. Now, you've had as all of us, all entrepreneurs have had a journey, some ups and a few downs along the way, and I guess we can all identify with that. But tell me, Chris, how did you get to the point where you decided to focus on thought leadership as a topic to drive your next business venture forward or your next business life forward? How did you get to that point?
Well, that's a great question, Cal. And what drove that decision was modeling the difference between the businesses that had breakthrough results using marketing, results like growing 400% over a period of just a few years, of growing from about 20% market share to over 50% market share in a period of 2 years, and totally renovating their sales process so that it's completely transformed the process to get customers, and seeing the difference between the businesses that lead industries and those that don't is comes down to the leaders of the business see themselves as the leaders of the thinking in their segment. And having a background in NLP or neurolinguistic programming is really helpful in the sense that it's all based on modeling excellence. It's a language of being able to discover the essence behind high performers, whether that's originally it was developed in high performers and people like Milton Erickson who could tell stories and change people's lives, and other people involved in therapy who are game changers. But then he modeled people in sales and marketing and business and sports. And it gives you the building blocks of understanding what's really behind success, because it's behind the thinking strategies people use. And there's a very different thinking strategy behind industry leaders or segment leaders or niche leaders. They see themselves as leaders of how their segment thinks about what they do. They have a vision that's different. They have empathy for the other side. They're not just seeing themselves as leaders in terms of sales. They see themselves as leaders in terms of thinking. And that's one of some of the characteristics, and organized in an approach to bring this about. They also see the media they do as being there not just to make sales. Of course, we all want to make sales. We want to convert our visitors to prospects and our prospects to customers. But they saw everything they did in communicating with the marketplace. And now, of course, we do that largely over the internet. They saw it as being there to empower the customer. And when you make your marketing designed for empowerment, it's such a difference, because then people want to engage your content. You mentioned Pullfillment, the book that I'm working on. It may be titled something else when it comes out, but we might keep that. And it's based on the fact that successful businesses generally are very sensitive to customer demand. They have a sense for what people want. Now, they may have a sense better than the customers themselves, because like Henry Ford said, if he just asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. But he was in tune with the overriding value of getting places better, faster. And how they did it was up to him as a thought leader to give people a solution that they wouldn't have thought of themselves and educate them on how to take best advantage of that solution. So, Walt Disney, who would have said, develop these beautiful theme parks before Disneyland opened? But he had a sense of that unmet value of a fun, safe place for families to enjoy time together. And it's about being sensitive to unmet values and being able to develop a new model that gives people more of what they're not getting. And I'm a natural contrarian, so I've always been that way. I can't help it. Just wired that way. If I'm playing music, I can't play it the way it's written. I have to improvise something about it. And when I was in the fitness business, I started in the big box fitness industry, where the model was sell as many people as you can and hope most of them don't come up, because then you can't sell anymore. And this is not aligning the interests of the customers with the business. The business succeeds, the customer doesn't.
Yeah.
So I developed a model of small studios, all one-on-one training, made it efficient with it organizing around 30-minute workouts, so it didn't have to be as expensive, month-to-month type program, and aligned the success of the customer with the success of the business. And we ended up serving over 2,000 clients over a period of 10 years. I sold it in 2008 to Friendly Competition. And that's when I went into marketing. So that was the part I always enjoyed the most, was the educating the marketplace, about what to revere about what you do, how to get more value out of it. But you asked about how I got into thought leadership marketing. And part of it was modeling the people who are most successful and finding the common attributes and finding a way to teach that. The other was discovering that a coaching and consulting model could make a much bigger difference than just an agency model. And that's because in a lot of situations, not every situation, and the breakthrough clients I had in the agency side were usually the ones that saw me as a coach and consultant. So I could have an impact on the thinking of the leadership, because that's where the leverage is. Leverage is on the level of mental models. How do we think about what we do? And in terms of business people, how do we think about marketing? And as the contrarian now, I see the dominant paradigm in online marketing is the push marketing style, where you interrupt people's attention with paid for ads that may have nothing to do with what they're trying to look at, and based on studying a customer's history and expecting to do the same thing next. And when you do more of a pull marketing around thought leadership, you're not expecting them to do the same thing next. Everybody else is doing that. Where's the advantage? You're instead leading them to do something different next and educating them as to why that's more to their advantage. So it's all about leverage. It's all about getting the most possible results from everything you do in marketing with the least work and effort. And that comes from designing it from the customer's point of view to be empowering and to lead them to a new model that you've developed that's proprietary, that's distinctive to your business. And it's a lot of fun, Kim. It's like harvesting the genius, creativity that's within business leaders that they may not even recognize themselves. And almost everybody I've met who's been in business a while has developed something unique about how they communicate with the marketplace. It might be how they describe how to get the most out of what they do. Well, here's how you use it to get more out of it. It might be part of the sales process where they see the relationship differently from their competitors. It might be helping them just have a model for making a smarter buying decision. Hey, when you're looking to buy this, here's what you should look for. But what they almost never do is understand how to package that thinking into a model that is easily communicated to a large number of people over media and get that out there. So you are creating a media that empowers people. And I think part of that is because most of the education people give themselves online. I mean, the internet's made us all into our own detectives, and the studies I've seen show that somewhere between 81 and 89% of people research online before making a major purchase, even an offline purchase, buying car, buying out. They research on how to buy the best one, what to look for, how to get the most out of it. But by the time they actually reach out to a company, they've already gone through that process. So they're kind of outside of our radar while they're doing that research. So if we don't take the time to investigate what types of pre-purchase research questions people are asking on the internet, or that they talk amongst each other in places people speak openly, which is not in the blog post generally, it's in the comments. And it's in places like Reddit. So we analyze these conversations to find the kind of unmet values like Henry Ford could notice and like Walt Disney could notice, to find the common models of thinking about an industry from the customer's point of view, and develop a new model to give them more of what they value based on that. It's like, I guess you'd call it insight marketing. You could call it outside marketing. Yep. It's based on insight into what, go see my camera's leaning, so I'm going to adjust it.
Okay.
It's based on insight into unmet values, and it's based on insight into what would give people more of that, what would give more of what they want.
Yeah, there's software that you can pay for that will search out comments, etc., and deliver them to you in a easy to digest form. So,
yeah.
So looking for insights, rather than doing it all yourself, the software will lean it.
Yeah, there is, and we actually have our own software that we just use internally. We haven't marketed it as software to anyone, but it scrapes places like Reddit
Yeah,
based on keyword searches.
yeah.
But it also the type of software that finds long tail internet searches like Google autofill.
Yeah,
That's where you can discover the kinds of questions people ask. And but then you have to have the eyes to see
yes.
what they're really telling you that's not necessarily explicit because people say, oh, we want this. Uh, but that may not be what will really light them up because they may
No,
not realize what will light them
you've
up.
got to be able to sort of understand what they're really saying.
Yeah, yeah. What are they saying? And I guess telling some stories to give examples can be helpful. There's a customer that we have, a startup that does online or does web-based fundraising for youth sports teams, which is huge in the US. I mean, think about any kid's soccer team needs to raise money, used to do car washes, used to do bakes and stuff. And then this whole class of companies came out with the internet and said, oh, now we're going to give you an app that's going to make it so much easier to raise money. Well, we had a customer we did a project for, and he had a startup. This is before COVID to do youth sports fundraising. So we did that research and discovered that what the parents and coaches were saying to each other was, yeah, these apps make it easy, but what's that teaching the kids? We
Mhm.
used to have to work to raise money. There was lessons in that. In my day, you had to walk uphill going to school and going home. So the unmet value was growth for the kids. So
Yeah,
we suggested and implemented a thought leadership model that used an app that was just as easy as any of the competitors, but it partnered the teams with charities. And they'd either share a little bit, a small percentage of what they raised and co-promote the charity's message with a fundraising campaign. Or they would do some volunteer work for the charity in exchange for that. And of course, what that did was it transformed it into, instead of being against the growth of the kids, it was all about the growth of the kids. So its thought leadership position came to be, it's about the growth of our kids. We turn this into a growth experience. Everybody else is just teaching them instant gratification. Aren't they entitled enough already?
yeah,
And this got him a deal with a large sporting goods chain. This got him on the front page of sports sections of newspapers. Constantly gets emails saying things like, "Wow, we wanted to get the kids involved in our community. We never thought about their fundraising as a way to do this. This is great. We're only going to use you going forward." Uh, Cutting through that marketplace in a way that a small startup never could have done, saying, "Oh, we're just another one of them with an app that makes it easy."
yeah. But how does this sort of sounds really more like you know the VP value proposition, or the USP as they used to call, probably some still do, still call it that unique selling proposition. Um, where does that type of thing end and thought leadership comes in? What's the difference between thought in your estimation, the difference between
Mhm.
thought leadership and just traditional value proposition, educating the marketplace about your VP? What do you see as the difference?
That's a great question, Kim. There's a couple important distinctions. One is that, we're comparing a USP with a thought leadership position.
Yeah,
And the difference is a USP is usually oriented around describing the benefits of a product or service, but it's designed to say, here's what we have, here's the special benefits, here's what makes it unique. A thought leadership position is designed to teach customers how to think from their point of view. So it's totally from the customer's point of view, how they think about a product or service.
mm,
So USP for that app might be, hey, we help kids, connect with the community and get more out of that, as opposed to others that are just about making it easy. Where a thought leadership position would be, you need to make your fundraising about the growth of the kids. You need to make it a growth experience in general. And you can even take a position of leading a whole industry, which sounds kind of like, well, lead everybody else to do this. I don't have any strategic advantage, except you're the leader. And it creates a lot more viral travel for your message when you open it up to a
Yeah.
larger mission like that.
So
So that's one
it's
piece
more
of it.
about education than selling, hard sell. Forget that. It's more about education, isn't it?
It's about education and it's about empowerment. And it's also about making it strategic in the sense that you're not just trying to influence on the level of skills and knowledge, which I know a lot of people who talk about thought leadership says you're there to educate. Absolutely, you're there to educate. You're there to help people get more out of what you sell. But this is more about influencing on a mental model level, it's influencing on belief systems. It's recognizing a common belief system that you can change for the benefit of the recipient. And when you
Yeah.
influence on the level of mental models or
Yeah.
beliefs, there's a lot more leverage in that.
Yeah. 100%. So who is it, in terms of reframing the conversations that consumers are having with themselves? Um, who is going to be doing this educating? Is it going to be the company, the corporation, or is it going to be an individual as a thought leader?
Well, it could be either one. And if it's a company, sometimes it's nice to give a face to the company and have a leading individual within the company be the one that communicates. So it feels more like a one-to-one conversation, depending, or there might be multiple people if it's a large organization that all have their own mental model thought leadership positions that they're leading the segment to that unify with a strategic, more global thought leadership position that the company represents.
Yeah.
So there's a wide span of that based on the needs of the organization, the size of their market, the size and the various things that do, how broad is their market or service segment.
Yeah. So okay, in the corporate sphere, I guess we can, if like a CEO embraced the concept of thought leadership, he could become the thought leader for that organization, couldn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. And the question becomes, do you want the thought leadership position to be identified with the organization's position as a whole, or do you want it to be aligned with a particular individual within the organization who's the leader within the organization? And it just depends on the context.
Yeah. What about smaller businesses where you've got more, think more in terms of founders rather than CEOs? They're the hard driving entrepreneurs. They're trying to, you know, build a good business. Is there a role for them to?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's like, I've come to believe that strategic thought leadership is absolutely foundational to effective marketing now. And I have not yet seen a case where it could not be implemented. Even
Yeah.
as someone who's got like a hairstyling salon, their thought leadership position might be about their special relationship with their customers and how they see the setting is not just about looking bad, but about taking that time out of your busy life to feel great because of how well you're treated and the special things they do for you while you're there. So
Yeah.
it can be scaled to any level up or down. It's an attitude, as well as a method.
We think about some of the most famous brands on the planet. Um, Currently, we've got Tesla and companies like that. Of course, Apple with Stephen Jobs. I mean, he was a thought leader, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he was challenging the status quo in a big way.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I remember when the iPhone came out, I was all into, I think, the Palm or the BlackBerry things that I was thinking, how can you do without physical keys? I like the physical keys, but Jobs did a real good job of selling the screen, taking over that function, so then you had more screen for everything else too.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's a bit of a maverick in a way, wasn't
Yeah, and I think, we need mavericks. We need more mavericks.
he? Absolutely.
Creative thinking in business is how we move forward.
Elon Musk and now it's Twitter, now called X.
Right. Yep. There's Maverick for you.
Yeah,
But where would we be without Elon's leadership in the electric car industry? He kind of forced
yeah,
the issue.
yeah, that's right. And even moving say away from the US, we've got people like Richard Branson, the Virgin
Hmm.
Group. very much a maverick, built a huge personal brand, but he was a thought leader in his own way. Still is.
That's right.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of people hear about thought leadership and think, well, that can just be all about ego and I'm more about service. But it really is a service. And for some, they can make the transition better when instead of trying to think of themselves as a thought leader, which will come with that, think about the practice of strategic thought leadership, which sometimes gets missed because people just depend on, the size of their audience and their authority more so than the usefulness and the empowerment of the new thinking that they're leading people to. And there's a lot of power in strategically designing this new thinking so that it's easy to assimilate, so that there's plenty of pillars of persuasion to impact thinking, because then it's hard to make the jump over a wide gulf if you're too much of a maverick and you got a status quo that's going to be shooting you down because suddenly a lot of people feel their careers are threatened because you're pointing out some fallacies within an industry or profession. And I actually wrote a whole long post in a podcast about it, how to pick your battles, because you got the friction versus the impact. But almost always there's plenty of opportunities to make a lot of impact without that much friction by just picking your battles and saying, well, if we just steer thinking this way, this much, this is going to really help people revere what we do for them at a higher level and get more out of it. Because it's really all about helping the customer get more out of whatever it is that you do or
Yeah,
offer. Through empowering them to think about it in a new way that they wouldn't have thought of on their own.
yeah. One of the things that when I'm writing about thought leadership, I often say that you're going to, if you do it properly, you're challenging the status quo. Be prepared for pushback, and if you can't handle it, maybe thought leadership isn't for you. Maybe you're more of a subject matter expert. But yeah, yeah, you don't want to create too many enemies, but got to if you've got a point of view that's a little bit different, and you can demonstrate that your way of thinking is superior to status quo. Well, why wouldn't you tell the world about it?
Well, that's right. And that's where things like NLP and developing strategies of persuasion. And the way we address it is we help organizations, come up with a clear thought leadership position that you contrast with the baseline thinking you're leading people from, and then put it into a syntax that allows you to apply multiple persuasive language patterns to develop talking points that support your new position and then undermine the old position, that can, and it makes things like content marketing and PR and any kind of persuasive campaign much more coherent, because then every single message that you're putting out there, every content piece you're putting out there has a backstory. We're leading thinking from here to there, very specific. Here's the points that support a position. We're going to incorporate these points into this so that we are positively persuading people to at least suspend their old way of thinking long enough to entertain the benefits of this new way of thinking and evaluate how much more that can do for them.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people associate thought leadership with what in Australia we call it the big end of town, right? The big corporations, they're the ones that do all this kind of stuff. But is there a role for thought leadership for the small business?
Absolutely. And to me, if you are helping one person shift their thinking in a positive way that helps them get more value out of whatever your service or business or product is, you're practicing thought leadership for that person. You don't have to tip a whole market segment to your way of thinking to do successful thought leadership. You just need to tip a certain size audience that's relevant to your business, to your way of thinking. And in many cases, that's what allows a smaller business to scale up, because they get a following around their specific way that enables them to start moving on up from there.
Way of thinking, but then we've got to be able to articulate the message through content. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's good, I think, in my model, it's good to separate the two. And so that because what sometimes happens is we have these categories of content people associate with thought leadership, white papers, um, podcasts, unique research, and they're containers for thought leadership. They're where it lives. But if there's not a well-formed message, a well-formed strategic message within that answers questions like, where are we leading people to? Who are we leading? Where are we leading them from? What's in it for them? How are they going to understand the value of that? If it's not answering those kinds of questions, then it can be a certain kind of content, but it's just regurgitation of what everybody else in the industry is saying. And I saw a recent study, is LinkedIn plus a partner company, I forget the partner company's name, on thought leadership. And they found that 71%, if I remember correctly, of the people they surveyed thought that more than half of the quote thought leadership content unquote didn't have any unique perspective to it. It was also, did not offer anything unique, didn't offer special value. Insight was the word, didn't offer them insight.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful when we're doing thought leadership to focus on the value of the message, the insight, the empowerment. And to me, that comes from working on the level of having a well-formed mental model that gives people more value, that's very distinctive and very empowering, and lends itself to people sharing and people engaging. Things like engagement metrics go up because now we're seeing artificial intelligence disrupt the search engine optimization industry, because people are asking ChatGPT what they used to ask Google. Some of them are incorporating this, but what that's affecting are businesses that used to depend on search engine traffic because they had good answers to questions people asked search engines. And what I tell them is that what you need to see yourself doing is creating a well-organized message that is packaged to be resilient to artificial intelligence.
What about the role of stories in thought leadership content, embedding stories into the content, make it more personal, more real?
Well, you have to do that. It needs to be brought to life, and when we talk about having these talking points, the talking points resonate best when they're embedded in stories.
Yeah.
And stories engage people. There's a structure of stories that engages people really well. A lot of people are familiar with the hero's journey method of using the story structure of the archetypes of powerful myths. And Joseph Campbell, who wrote Hero with a Thousand Faces, and George Lucas of Star Wars used to model the Star Wars story, outlined what he called the monomyth, these stages of a story that resonate with people. Things like, being called to a higher mission by a herald and having to fight the guardians of the threshold, which can take many forms these days, maybe Wikipedia editors, for instance, and overcoming the guardians of the threshold to find a new power to grow personally. And it's effective because it resonates with our own inner journey, and our own spiritual growth. But encapsulating our message within stories that resonate is how we're going to get the most engagement. Now, you're a master of that, obviously, and finding people, getting people to inventory the stories and to start to match them up with a structure like that is one thing that helps do that.
That's right. The personal stories, the inclusion of personal stories in a piece of content is probably the best way to counteract the effects of AI, because AI cannot replicate those stories because they're new. It's brand new story. It's come from me. It's come from you. It's your story. And you've embedded it and you included it in the content piece, whether it's video or text or whatever.
That's right.
And then you stand apart. People remember those stories long after facts and figures have been forgotten. So
absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of AI, we're talking about AI, and something else I've discovered in addition to that is that for your message to cut through, And now with a lot of people asking things like Chat GPT, it's having a well-organized model so that it'll point back to you, a proprietary name, maybe an acronym or something, and making it universal enough so that it's not just about you. So if you're doing thought leadership on that kind of scale, you have to account for, if AI ingests my content, is it going to point back to me? It's like if you ask ChatGPT what an idea virus is, it says, well, this was originally talked about by Seth Godin, who wrote the book Unleashing the Idea Virus in 2001, because he obviously had a well-formed thought leadership model he presented it through.
Fantastic. So, how do you like to work with people in this arena, this thought leadership arena? How can you help them?
Well, as a consultant and coach is where I get the most leverage. And working with a solopreneur or the leader within a business or with the marketers within a business, maybe a CMO, if not CEO or president, is where a lot of the leverage is. And the thing is, what I usually describe it as is like if you hire an agency, what most leaders will do is see them as down the hierarchy, someone to delegate to, someone to take it off their shoulders, and they expect them through what they're willing to pay for to work within their mental model of what marketing is. But all the leverage is in changing our mental models of what marketing is. And I don't come in as a consultant who says, I know more than you. I come in as a consultant and advisor who says, let's look at some research together. We have a method for doing a unique kind of market research to discover unmet values and the right mental models for change, and to harvest a thinking within your organization that can be packaged in a way to lead your marketplace to a new mental model that is just yours. So it involves interviews with the leadership. It involves market research that we share with them so that we collaborate on developing this. And it really creates a unified sense of working together that I've never seen on the agency side. And the unified sense of working together comes from working from commonly discovered, we mutually discover insights that we work on together.
Extremely powerful and exciting. And potentially, if a company gets it right, gets it working properly, the effect on their bottom line, on their revenue, their bottom line profits, incredible increases potentially over the next X number of years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what creates breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And you know, I found it actually easier to get a breakthrough and get a big leap up in sales and results with this kind of methodology than to work on getting incremental results within a model.
Yeah.
It's more leverage in changing your marketing model in some way than there is in working within your model and trying to just then of course you always want to optimize the variables within the model, but it's the innovation to something new that you start optimizing.
Yeah, a game-changing kind of a situation, potentially.
That's right. It's all about changing the game by changing the frame, change the frame of how people see what you do.
Fabulous. Now, how do people get in touch with you, Chris?
Well, thoughtleadershipstudio.com is a podcast site, and I also blog there and write a lot about that. And the best place for people to start learning more about how this applies to them and what they can immediately do to make a difference is a free ebook I wrote called The Marketer's Guide to Strategic Thought Leadership. And they can get that by going to thaut.io, and that's spelled funny, like you said in the beginning, THAUT.io/guide. And that's totally free.
Yeah, that's right. We'll have all of the Chris's details in the show notes when So either way, they'll be able to, and also LinkedIn. They can get you on LinkedIn, Chris McNeil.
Yeah, absolutely. Just you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Chris McNeil Thought Leadership.
Great, fantastic. Well, the first session in this new thought leadership series. Looking forward to some more, but great to kick off with you, Chris, because you've done a heck of a lot of work in this area.
I appreciate it, Kim. I appreciate the opportunity and appreciate you and your time.